Hi, my name is Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Hopefully you're excited to see me again. Here we discuss several news stories twice a week, and then we discuss them together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. And speaking of comments, I appreciate all of them, and I really highly encourage you to leave your questions, suggestions, and constructive criticism because it helps me build further episodes. Let's go. As you know, this segment is divided into three parts, and it starts with Ukraine. Well, hi, I'm here in Ukraine, in Kyiv. It is currently Wednesday, November 6th, and it's about 10 a.m. And, well, I know I just said that we're going to start with Ukraine, but I do have to mention that, obviously, November 5th was the election in the United States, and it is very important for Ukraine as well as the rest of the world. And from what it's looking like right now, Donald Trump is projected to win it. I will say for myself, and it doesn't represent my employer, honestly, what the actual hell. And that's about all I'm going to say about it right now. I guess we're going to have to discuss this in the next episode further. In the meanwhile, let's come back to what's been happening in Ukraine because it's a lot, and unfortunately, it's no different than in the previous segment, and in the previous segment, and in the previous segment. Barrages of drones coming onto our country. 6 people were killed and 9 injured in a Russian attack on Zaporizhia. A fire broke out at the impact site. The injured are currently receiving all necessary medical assistance. That is as of a couple of hours ago, and the statistics has been updated twice since then, and the number of wounded as a result of the Russian shelling of Zaporizhia increased to 16 2 hours ago, and then to 23 people as of the time of the recording. And the fire that started at the point of impact has been extinguished at this point. Also, this is a statistic that I think is incredibly important, and I think that we really need to discuss it, and it's something that I guess hasn't been mentioned widely until recently. In the past 3 months, Russia has launched approximately 4,300 Shahed drones and other similar attack drones over Ukraine. Ukrainian air defense forces successfully intercepted and destroyed around 71% of these targets. That means 29% of these targets obviously have not been destroyed, and that means that they caused a lot of damage. Now, this statistic is not just for Kyiv, obviously, it's for the whole of Ukraine. But as a Kyiv resident, I can tell you it feels like all of these Shaheds were flying on the capital in the past 2 weeks, because I think last night was the first night without an actual air raid. There was one, not 20 across the whole night, and it wasn't impactful because, well, it didn't last long and nothing much has happened. But in general, other than yesterday, usually there are about 10 to 20 air raids every single night in the capital of Ukraine, and all of them are due to Shahed drones. They're flying incredibly low, and they're destroying people's apartments, they're destroying buildings, the debris falls, and it causes a lot of damage. And why is Russia targeting Ukraine's electrical infrastructure? Well, I mean, outside of the obvious, also any damage to the electrical grid this season is going to result in 20-hour-long blackouts all over Ukraine in the winter. And let me tell you, winter is not a pleasant season in this country. It's not quite Siberia, as many people imagine. As someone who's lived in the US half of their life, every single time I'd be cold in a New York winter, people would be like, oh, but aren't you okay with winter? You're Ukrainian. As if, I came out straight from Siberia and I live in an igloo myself. Our winters are not what people assume Russian winters to be like, or our winters are not the same as Russian winters. They're quite harsh, but they're not Siberia. They're also not, complete snowouts and igloo life, but they're quite harsh. So living in 20-hour blackouts in the winter is going to be absolutely dreadful. I mean, I think living in 20-hour blackouts in any country in the winter would be dreadful, regardless of the climate. It's winter. Ukrainian intelligence sources reported the first combat engagement between Ukrainian forces and North Korean troops in Russia's Kursk region, according to the Financial Times. In an interview with Politico, Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov confirmed that Ukraine is experiencing combat clashes with North Korean military forces. Umerov added that more such encounters are expected in the coming weeks as the situation intensifies. The foreign ministers of the G7 countries, along with 3 key allied nations, have expressed serious concern over North Korea's deployment of troops in Russia. They announced that they're coordinating efforts to develop a joint response of this development. And we're going to talk a lot more extensively about what's happening with the North Korean troops in our section that concerns the Western world rather than Ukraine, because there are a lot more updates there and there are a lot more updates involving South Korea. But in general, I still can't believe, I guess today I can believe anything because, hey, Donald Trump just won the election in America. But I cannot believe that we really are not paying nearly as much attention as we should to what's happening. North Korea, a nuclear dictatorship, has just started aiding Russia with tons of its soldiers in an invasion of a European country. And now, whether you like Ukraine or not, the simple fact that two dictatorships are, I guess, bonding and gearing up together to invade a European country is abominable. Also, an interesting fact that I guess makes this situation a little more funny, although it's not funny at all, is that apparently, according to sources, North Korean soldiers have never, ever in North Korea had free access to the internet. So a lot of them, and I wish I was joking, are spending their time on their phone accessing pornography websites. Well, because they've literally never had the opportunity to do so. So at least there is some humor in that, right? President Volodymyr Zelensky, in his evening address, acknowledged the significance of the first encounters with North Korean soldiers, describing it as a new chapter of global instability. I want to thank everyone around the world who responded to the presence of North Korean soldiers in Russia, and I especially thank those who are not merely responding with words, but are preparing meaningful actions to support our defense here in Ukraine. He emphasized that terror can spread like a virus when not met with strong resistance, adding, "Now, our resistance must be strong enough, sufficient to prevent further escalation and to ensure that this Russian move ends in failure." And I really want to strongly echo his words because, honestly, as the Western world, we really need to get our together and meet this with a strong response, not words of condemnation, not words of, upset, not words of strong warnings, actual, concrete action, not words of concern, action, because this is a dictatorship aiding another dictatorship. Even if its soldiers are spending more time accessing porn websites than actually fighting, it is still a very, very bad alliance. And honestly, one of the only positive things that are coming out of this is South Korea is really stepping up its game, and it looks like maybe, and that's just my opinion, South Korea is going to be our main partner in 2025 because they really do now have the stake in the game, and of course things are looking not great from where they're standing. And I mean, I say this because I feel like Ukraine is going to have to look for another strategic partner that isn't the United States, provided what's been happening with the American election. And we have reached our worldwide section, which is Western Axis, and the things that are happening there. And there is, again, a lot to talk about. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski indicated in an interview with TVN24 that the issue of intercepting missiles over Ukraine may be addressed next week during a NATO ministerial meeting. This is a discussion about where the right to self-defense begins and ends. We only have the right to intercept a missile once it's over our territory. If so, then situations like what happened in Przewodów could happen again. The wreckage of such a missile can harm, injure, or even kill someone, Sikorski said. He was responding to questions on whether Russian missiles heading towards Poland could be intercepted before entering Polish airspace. Sikorski acknowledged that this Ukrainian request could lead to differing opinions among allies. This is a matter for arrangements and discussions among our allies. We have a new NATO Secretary General, and the next NATO meeting will take place next week. Perhaps this issue will be on the agenda, Sikorski added. But to be fair, looking back at history, first of all, Poland can't even intercept missiles if they are over Polish territory, because of course they have to contact NATO officials, and then they have to get permission, and then they have to take down the missile. So realistically, every single time, they just waited until the missile exits Polish airspace. So when Sikorski says that they only have the right to intercept missiles while they get to the Polish territory, well, they don't even have the right to do that as of the moment. And I really hope that with Mark Rutte becoming the NATO Secretary General, things are going to be changing from Jens Stoltenberg, who was a lot less decisive and a lot less hawkish on the situation in Ukraine and the situation and Russia's aggression. He was good, but also I think Mark Rutte is supposed to be a lot stronger in this regard, and I really, really hope that he is. The European Union and South Korea have agreed to cooperate on defense initiatives, as reported by Deutsche Welle. And this should alleviate a lot of pressure from the European Union for manufacturing of equipment and manufacturing of missiles and stuff like that, because South Korea has a huge military production. And they also have really quality military equipment. I mean, of course, nothing beats the US, but South Korea is a big contender. And honestly, it's a big shift, provided that they are wanting to help Ukraine now. And I think that this cooperation is only going to deepen. The agreement was reached during a meeting between EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Joseph Borrell and South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-jolek. Brussels and Seoul aim to enhance dialogue on maritime and space security, defense, cybersecurity, hybrid threats, foreign interference, information manipulation, counterterrorism, and disarmament. And all of that sounds great and fantastic, but also, I mean, there has been so much foreign interference and information manipulation from Russia in all Western nations. And, you know, the EU sees it, and the EU is doing really very little about it. And of course, we're seeing what's happening in the US. You know, just yesterday, Russians were calling in bomb threats in swing states' polling locations in order to prevent people from voting. Mail-in ballots were not reaching people, and people had to fly from their, homes where they live now to their states where they're registered to vote in order to cast their ballots, which is a luxury that a lot of people can't afford. There was so much Russian interference in the American election. There was so much Russian interference in the American information space. There is so much Russian interference in the Moldovan election, in the Georgian election, in elections worldwide, and so much interference in the information space. And honestly, hearing it from the European officials, hearing them say, oh, we need to work on our information manipulation techniques. You guys, you are literally refusing to clean your information space. And I'm sorry for being so blunt today, but what day is better than today? Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna stated that all demands to end the war in Ukraine should be directed solely at Russia, emphasizing that discussions that downplay Moscow's actions are perilous. Drawing a historical parallel, he referenced the Munich Agreement, which offered concessions to an aggressor and ultimately only delayed the onset of World War II. Tsahkna warned that the current global situation resembles the atmosphere of 1938 in significant ways, but expressed hope that the mistakes of that era can still be avoided. The same thing was said by Timothy Snyder. He consistently keeps emphasizing that we are not in 1939 yet. We are in 1938, and things are still brewing, and it's still up to us to decide which way things are gonna go. I do want to remind you, and I am mentioning Donald Trump a lot in this episode, and I do want to say these opinions are mine and my own. However, he has said that he wants to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. And that means complete concessions for Ukraine and, Russia getting what Russia wants, which is exactly what the Estonian foreign minister is talking about here. The Munich Agreement, which offered concessions to an aggressor and ultimately only delayed the onset of World War II, which, by the way, Russia does not consider World War II a world war. They consider it a great patriotic war, and they do not count it from 1938. They count it from 1941, when Kyiv was bombed at 4 a.m. Because to them, it's only a war between Russia and Germany. And they also completely disregard the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where Russia and Germany were allied. Yeah, so just this tiny little lesson in history that I hope we're not going to be repeating, but it looks like we're stepping on the same, pathway again, unfortunately. Google has responded to the recent controversy surrounding an update to its maps, which included images revealing the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces. The company clarified that these images were taken over a year ago and sourced from publicly accessible data. Google assured that it does not intentionally release recent images of active conflict zones and highlighted its ongoing communication with Ukrainian authorities to address such concerns. The update in question involved new satellite images on Google Maps that displayed the positions of Ukrainian military assets, including air defense systems. And while these pictures were taken over a year and a half ago, some of these locations are constantly shifting, and some, air defense comes back to its location. So Google should not be posting anything like that to begin with. And there is no need to update Google satellite images of, as they said, conflict zones. It doesn't matter if this information is outdated. It gives Russia information. It gives Russia visual confirmation of things they might have thought were true or might have thought that were right but didn't have confirmation to. And even if it's not relevant today, it's relevant to their research. It's relevant to confirming things that they might not have been able to confirm otherwise. And also posting pictures of air defense systems, literally, it doesn't matter if it was a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, is just not okay. And Google should stop updating satellite images of these defense systems. And if they, or in general, of anything close to the front lines or anything close to any air defense positions or anything like that. And if they want to update these satellite images, then they need to understand that their responsibility lies on them to edit these images and take out locations of anything connected to the military and anything that could aid Russia. So I honestly really don't care what they have to say in this subject and really don't care if these images are old. They should not have done it. They shouldn't be doing it in the future. During his visit to Kyiv this week, Swedish Defense Minister Carl Oskar Bolin announced a new civil defense aid package for Ukraine valued at $9.3 million. The package includes 2 patrol vessels, 24 passenger cars, a minibus, a truck, a personal protective equipment provided by Sweden's Coast Guard. Additionally, 40,000 protective masks with filters will be purchased and supplied to Ukraine. This support is aimed at bolstering Ukraine's civil defense capacities amidst ongoing challenges. And of course, among all of these horrendous news, it's a really small but a very good piece of very good news, and it's really nice to read. Although honestly, today is the day that Ukrainian people are very uncertain about our future and everything that's going to happen. And the reason for that is, of course, Russia and certain events in the elections worldwide. And that's how we arrive at the Russian Axis part of this segment, where we will talk about, well, Russia being a shit show as per usual. And of course, this week, it outdoes itself because it always does. However, this time I think it's not even Russia that outdoes itself, it's the Western world and their attitudes towards Russia and Russian officials. Ksenia Yudaeva, a Russian financier currently under U.S. sanctions, will represent Russia and Syria at the International Monetary Fund, IMF, Reuters reports. The former IMF executive director for Russia, Alexei Mozhin, who had held the position since 1996, announced that Yudaeva would be taking over. Yudaeva recently stepped down as an advisor to the head of the Bank of Russia on October 31st. An IMF representative noted that executive directors are IMF officials required to act in the fund's interests and comply with its legal and policy framework. The IMF's executive board, which oversees day-to-day decisions, consists of directors elected by member countries or country groups and handles everything from country economic reviews to global economic policy discussions. A U.S. Treasury Department spokesperson declined to comment on Yudaeva's ability to serve under the current sanctions. Meanwhile, on December 2, 2024, Alexei Mozhin is set to begin his new role as an advisor to Bank of Russia Governor Elvira Nabiullina. I don't think there is much that I need to say about this. Russian officials in general should not be present at international discussions, like in the International Monetary Fund, especially because Russia is sanctioned and we are trying to tank Russia's economy because Russia is using all of its money and resources to invade Ukraine and to disrupt the world in general. And we're letting them be represented at the IMF? Okay, sure. We're also letting them be represented at the IMF by a person directly responsible for Russia's war against Ukraine, for Russia making and spending its money on disrupting international operations and international security and international world order. It's just, it feels like we keep living in a really bad Matrix/Simpsons crossover in the past. Well, more than 3 years, but 3 years it has been like a peak of this Simpsons X Matrix crossover episode. Russia has launched 2 Iranian satellites, Kausar and Hadhad, into space. The Kausar satellite is reported to have high-resolution imaging capabilities, potentially enhancing Iran's ability to capture detailed images from space. Yay, just what we needed. The Hadhad satellite is a smaller communications satellite intended to support the development of satellite communication networks. Iran views the successful launch of these satellites as a major step forward in its space program, highlighting the partnership between Tehran and Moscow in advancing Iran's technological and space capabilities. Again, is this a joke? What kind of a really screwed up writing room made up this episode of Moscow x Tehran collaboration? It's really not it. It should not be happening. We have Iran having advanced images from space satellites. Great. Russian oil companies, however, are facing growing challenges in repairing refineries equipped with imported technology, according to industry sources cited by Reuters. In October, 3 refineries were unable to fully complete scheduled repairs, and they have extended the downtime of certain units into November. The affected refineries include Lukoil's Volgograd plant, one of Russia's 10 largest, with a capacity of 15 million tons annually, as well as the Isky and Yaya refineries. Consequently, idle refining capacity could exceed planned levels by 1.5 times, rising from the initially projected 1.2 million tons to between 1.8 and potentially 2 million tons, sources report. The disruption stems from Western sanctions that have halted the supply of equipment and components to Russia. Many Russian refineries, including the 40 largest, were built or modernized with the technology and software of European and American companies such as UOP and ABB, whose support is now restricted. This reliance on foreign technology has left Russian refineries vulnerable as they face difficulties in sourcing essential parts and expertise under current sanctions. However, that comes into question because, again, one of the things that Donald Trump said in his election campaign is that he wants to remove sanctions from Russia. So, honestly, anything that I feel like we're going to be reporting until Donald Trump takes office, because unfortunately America does have a lot of influence worldwide, is not really anything that we can say with certainty, because things are going to change in January, and we don't know what way or how they're going to change, because there is so much uncertainty. As much as there is uncertainty here in Ukraine, there is also now a lot of uncertainty in the United States for immigrants, for women, for children, for education, for a lot of things. And I, for one, am terrified to see what's going to come out of it. And unfortunately, this is all I have for you for today. I'm sorry to end this on such a bad note, but hey, that's the type of day we're having here in the world, in Ukraine, and I guess in the United States. You know, if your mental health is suffering, there are lots of hotlines that you could be reaching out to in order to speak to someone, and I really mean that because I do know that this election was a nerve-wracking situation for a lot of people in America and also a lot of people worldwide. So please do not hesitate to reach out to either these hotlines or your loved ones or literally anyone close to you if you need to speak to someone. You're not alone, and I really mean that. Well, thank you for watching this segment, and if you would like to continue watching it and get more news from me and from the gays, please do subscribe to the channel. Also, do give this video a like and send it to a friend, because you never know who might be interested in getting just a little more news or seeing my face again, you know? And of course, please do leave a comment under this video. I read all of them, and I really highly appreciate them for modeling next episodes. Thank you, and see you next time.